There comes a moment every man recognizes. You don't need me to describe it in detail. You already know exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't hit you like a diagnosis. It doesn't come with a warning label. It just shows up. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, somewhere between your 40s and your 60s, and suddenly you realize the version of yourself you've always known is operating on a different frequency. Maybe it's the energy. The kind that used to be just there, automatic, reliable. Now it's running on a timer. 3 o'clock hits and it's like someone quietly pulled a plug. You sit down for a minute and wake up an hour later, vaguely embarrassed, telling yourself it was just a long week. Maybe it's the mental edge, the sharpness that made you someone people leaned on, someone who could hold 10 things in his head at once and still have bandwidth left over. Now it takes more effort to do less. You're still functioning, you're still showing up, but you can feel the gap between who you are now and who you used to be. And that gap is getting harder to ignore. And then there's the other thing. The thing men almost never say out loud. The moments in private when your body simply doesn't respond the way it should. When the connection between desire and physical response feels like a line with interference on it. You tell yourself it's stress. You tell yourself it's temporary. And part of you starts to quietly wonder if temporary has become permanent. I was there. I want you to know that before we go any further. I'm not talking about this from a distance. I sat with that frustration. I felt that specific kind of defeat that comes not from failing at something external, but from feeling like your own biology is failing you. And like most men, I did what men do. I pushed through. I made adjustments. I tried to sleep better, eat cleaner, work out more consistently. And some of that helped, a little, for a while. But the thing about pushing through is that it only works if the underlying problem is temporary exhaustion. When the underlying problem is something structural, something happening at a level you can't reach with willpower and discipline alone, pushing through is just a way of delaying the conversation you eventually have to have with yourself. That conversation for me came on a Wednesday morning. Nothing dramatic happened. I just looked in the mirror and stopped lying. Something had changed. I didn't fully understand what, and I wasn't willing to accept that my only option was to get used to it. So I went looking. Not for a product, not for a quick fix, for an actual explanation. I read research, consulted doctors, and eventually, through someone I trusted, I was pointed toward the work of one of the most respected urologists in the country. What I found in that work didn't just give me a solution. It completely rewired how I understood what was happening in my own body. And honestly, I'm still a little angry that no one explained this to me sooner. If you want to jump straight to what he recommended, the link is in the first line of the description right below this video. But if you want to understand the science, and I'd strongly encourage you to because it changes everything, stay with me. Because what I'm about to explain is something the conversation around men's health has been getting wrong for a very long time. For decades, maybe your whole adult life, you've been told that the key to male vitality is testosterone, low T testosterone replacement, hormone panels. And look, testosterone is real, it matters, and it's worth paying attention to. But the exclusive focus on it has created a massive blind spot in how men understand their own bodies. It has caused millions of men and many of their doctors to keep looking at one instrument on the dashboard, while the real engine issue is happening somewhere else entirely. The organ that actually controls the physical expression of male vitality. The one that determines whether blood moves freely through your body or whether it doesn't, is something almost no one talks about. It doesn't have the brand recognition of testosterone. It doesn't get its own awareness campaigns. Most men have never once heard it mentioned in a conversation about their health. It's called the endothelium. And once you understand what it does, you will never think about your body the same way again. The endothelium isn't a gland. It isn't a muscle you can see or feel. It's a system, a continuous layer of cells lining every single blood vessel in your body. If you stretched it all out flat, It would cover an area larger than 6 tennis courts. It runs for roughly 100,000 miles inside you. And it is, in every clinical sense that matters, one of the most important biological structures in the male body. When the endothelium is functioning the way it's supposed to, it produces a molecule called cyclic GMP, cGMP. Think of cGMP as the signal that tells the smooth muscle cells surrounding your arteries to relax and open up. When those cells relax, blood vessels dilate, blood flows, tissues get oxygen, and the physical responses that men associate with vitality, firmness, endurance, presence, drive, they happen naturally, the way they're designed to, without effort or anxiety or the creeping dread that they might not. That's what healthy looks like. And what I needed to understand was exactly why and how that system had stopped working the way it should. This is the biology that most men have never been taught. The capacity for physical vigor is not a matter of willpower or desire. It is a hydraulic event governed by blood flow, which is governed by vascular health, which is governed by the endothelium. When that system works properly, everything works properly. When it doesn't, no amount of motivation or mental effort will compensate. So what goes wrong? The answer comes down to an enzyme called phosphodiesterase type 5, or PDE5. This enzyme has one primary function in the body. It breaks down cGMP. In small amounts and under normal circumstances, this is actually a regulatory mechanism. But what happens in men as they age is that PDE5 activity increases dramatically. The enzyme stops acting as a regulator and starts acting as a suppressor. It breaks down cGMP faster than the endothelium can produce it. The signal never fully fires. The blood flow is never fully established. And the man wonders why his body isn't responding, blaming his age, stress levels, testosterone, when the real problem is this enzymatic imbalance. This was the central insight that changed everything for me. The problem was not that my body had forgotten how to function. The problem was that a specific enzyme was actively blocking the signal that would make it function. And if that was the problem, then the solution was not to force the body to respond through chemical means. The solution was to address the enzyme itself, to neutralize PDE5 and allow the endothelium to do what it was designed to do. That is exactly what the protocol I followed over 30 days was designed to accomplish. I want to walk you through what those 30 days looked like, because I think the timeline matters. A lot of men have been burned by solutions that promise instant results and deliver a brief, artificial effect that fades within hours. What I experienced was different in a fundamental way. It was cumulative. It was building something, not simulating something. During the first week, the changes were subtle enough that I almost doubted them. The most notable thing was what I would describe as a baseline shift in energy. I was waking up with more clarity. The mid-afternoon crash that had become almost ritualistic was less pronounced. I was not yet thinking in terms of dramatic transformation, but something was clearly changing in the underlying system. By the second week, the shift became more pronounced in two specific areas. My thinking felt cleaner. The kind of mental fog that I had attributed to getting older was lifting. I was sharper in conversations. I was holding complex ideas more easily. Exercise sessions that had felt like obligations became genuinely energizing again. Recovery between sets was faster. I was noticing a kind of physical responsiveness that I had not felt in years. The third and fourth weeks brought a quality of change that is harder to describe clinically, but that any man will recognize. It was the quiet, settled confidence of a man who feels like himself again. The moments that had been frustrating became reliably, naturally, powerfully different. By the end of the 30 days, the transformation was not a hope or an impression. It was measurable, real, and it was mine. What I now understand is that the protocol worked because it was addressing the root biological mechanism rather than overriding it. There is a category of intervention that functions by forcing a physiological response through chemical means. What the protocol does is give the body the raw materials and the biochemical environment it needs to regulate itself correctly. It restores the signal. It does not replace it. The central element of what the urologist recommended is a formulation called Vigor Long. I want to explain why the specific ingredients in this formulation are not arbitrary. Each one targets a distinct part of the problem. L-Arginine HCI is the precursor to nitric oxide, the molecule that the endothelium uses to trigger cGMP production. Without adequate L-Arginine availability, the entire signaling cascade is starved at the source. Supplementing with bioavailable L-Arginine restores the raw material the endothelium needs to do its job. Tongkat Ali has been shown to support the hormonal environment that complements endothelial function. It supports libido at the neurological level, not just the vascular one. Maca Root carries a significant body of research suggesting its ability to reduce oxidative stress in vascular tissue. Oxidative stress is one of the primary mechanisms through which PDE5 activity becomes dysregulated. Horny Goat Weed contains icariin, a compound that has been studied for its capacity to inhibit PDE5 activity directly. Icariin allows the body's natural signaling to proceed unimpeded. Beetroot and grapeseed extract both contribute to nitric oxide bioavailability and cardiovascular protection. Beetroot provides a backup route to the same vasodilatory effect. Grapeseed extract adds polyphenolic antioxidants that protect the endothelial lining itself from oxidative damage. Taken together, these compounds do not act as a temporary fix. They act as a system restoration and allow the endothelium to recover its natural function. This is why the effects I experienced built progressively over 30 days rather than appearing and disappearing within hours. I want to say something directly to the men watching this. The frustrating suspicion that there may be nothing to be done about it is wrong. It is wrong because the biology is not broken. The biology is blocked. What is blocked can be unblocked when you give the body the precise inputs it needs to clear the obstruction. The science exists. The clinical research exists. The decades of study on endothelial function, on PDE5 inhibition, on nitric oxide synthesis, exists and points toward a path that has nothing to do with resignation. For the full details of the clinical recommendation, click the first link in the description below this video. If this is the kind of content that matters to you, subscribe to this channel. There is more coming on the science of male biological optimization and the protocols that are changing lives for men. Share this with someone who needs it. The information is too important to keep to yourself. The choice is yours, but the biology is on your side if you give it what it needs.